indicted Kerry Thornley as part of this nexus of people involved in this assassination conspiracy, claiming that Thornley had been one of the notorious Oswald doubles that were running around portraying Oswald prior to the assassination to basically paint the picture of him as a lone nut, wacko, communist sympathizer. Eventually, Garrison claimed that his investigation was undermined by elements of the CIA and all these type of things, so his investigation got derailed and fell apart. So all of that was going on throughout the whole period. Thornley was saying, this is a bunch of crap. I'd never met Oswald. There was witnesses that came forward that claimed they saw Thornley and Oswald together during this period. And so we progress into the early 70s. Thornley comes across a book that's called Coup d'etat in America, which is an acronym for the CIA by a couple guys named Weberman and Canfield, who contended that the three hobos that were picked up in Daley Plaza, you remember those guys?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yes. Mm-hmm.
That they were actually guys who were intelligence agents who were involved in Bay of Pigs and also Watergate.
Frank Sturgis and E. Howard Hunt were supposedly two of them, correct?
Yeah, and those are the ones they identified, and they took the photos of the three tramps, and they also took, in the original book, which I still have, there's these photographic overlays that you can place over the pictures of the tramps, overlays of Sturgis and Hunt, and they match up pretty identically, their ears and everything, and at least from that book, it appears that, yeah, Sturgis and Hunt were a couple of the tramps. Hunt was the old man tramp. And so anyway, Thornley came across this material in the early 70s and went, whoa. The guy, he wasn't familiar with E. Howard Hunt up to that point. He goes, that's the guy that I had those conversations with in New Orleans in the early 60s about how to assassinate a president. That this guy, the guy he talked to, Gary Kirsten, was indeed E. Howard Hunt. And once he came to that realization, all these memories started flooding back that he had been some type of MK Ultra or mind control victim, that he and Oswald had been set up.
So he, considering the background and the fact that he came to this realization after being through all the things that he had been through, I imagine that must have been pretty mind-shattering for him to realize that, he was very close to being involved in the most notorious crime of all time, at least up until that point.
And according to the people I talked to, he kind of got derailed himself there in the late 70s and went off the deep end for a while, and was some people described him as became paranoid schizophrenic. But I think if you were set up for to be a patsy in the crime of the century, that would drive a lot of us crazy.
Oh, I'm sure it would definitely have a disastrous effect on you to realize, how close you were to something that you just had absolutely no idea about. And I mentioned earlier about how Robert Anton Wilson and the Illuminatus, incorporates Discordianism, and he had some connection with Thornley, did he not? I believe Thornley, in his at least at some point later in his life, claimed that Robert Anton Wilson was a CIA agent or something to that effect.
Yeah, that's what he suspected. I write about that. And actually, Wilson, he wrote the intro to The Prankster and the Conspiracy. He talks about period where Thornley basically went off the deep end, it would appear, and that he suspected that the likes of Robert Anton Wilson and other people that were his friends were plotting against him and were part of this conspiracy. And, that's, strangely enough, that's what Jim Garrison suspected when he was investigating Thornley. He came across some of the Discordian materials, and he jumped to the conclusion that the Discordian Society was a CIA front.
Would be. It's funny to think about, though. I mean, it's certainly one of the more bizarre aspects to the Kennedy assassination, which has no end of bizarrerie around it. That's for sure.
And Thornley started playing along with him for a while. This is back during the time of the investigation. Garrison had an investigator by the name of Alan Chapman who believed that the Illuminati was involved in the Kennedy assassination. So Kerry and some of his friends, including Robert Anton Wilson and some others, started writing these kind of fake letters they were sending out to the media that where they're claiming indeed they were the Bavarian Illuminati and the Discordian Society was connected to the Bavarian Illuminati and that they'd been involved behind all the major conspiracies. So that makes this story just so much crazier. Oddly enough, it's one of those things. It's a rabbit hole. There's a Bible to Discordian. It's called the Principia Discordia, and the first edition was written during the period that Thornley and his buddy Greg Hill were living in New Orleans. And Greg Hill, the co-founder of Discordianism, his girlfriend worked in Garrison's office, and they actually printed off the first 5 editions of the Principia Discordia in Garrison's office after hours on his mimeograph machine. So Garrison, that's true, and so Garrison as well was involved in this Discordian Illuminati conspiracy, whether he knew it or not. That's
a funny anecdote to the side that the something that he claimed was a CIA front thing was actually having its principal publication being run off on his mimeograph machine in his office when he wasn't there. So, like I said, there's just so much bizarre aspects to Kennedy assassination and Jim Garrison's investigation. One more interesting thing. You would think I was making all this shit up, but I'm not. I don't think you're making it up. Believe me.
The principal witness against Thornley was a lady by the name of Barbara Reed, and she was like a bohemian scene maker. And if you look in the history of New Orleans, she was heavily involved in the jazz scene back then, but she was also involved in all kinds of stuff. She was kind of involved in voodoo, and she was known as a witch in the French Quarter. But the principal witness of Kerry Thornley was also good friends with Kerry Thornley and his friend Greg Hill. Greg Hill, I think, dated Barbara Reed for a while, and Barbara Reed was one of the first members of the Discordian Society. And so what they would do for the early members of the Discordian Society, Greg Hill would make very elaborate embossed certificates, and he made one for Barbara Reed. Later, this material, as well as like photocopies of that first edition of the Principia Discordia, ended up in Jim Garrison's material from his investigation. These came out as Freedom of Information documents as well, So I think how Garrison got a hold of the Principi Discordia, and it became part of his investigation material. Barbara Reed gave it to him because among those materials also you'll see Barbara Reed's Discordian Society certificate. And so that's why Garrison was looking over all this stuff. He was basically saying that Thornley was part of a group of CIA agents involved in the Kennedy assassination, and Thornley was involved with the Discordian Society, so he connected the dots as they made sense to him, and that's why Garrison thought that the Discordian Society was some type of CIA front for Thornley's activities related to the Kennedy assassination.
I guess probably Thornley himself probably came to believe that if that wasn't the case, then maybe it was also being set up to be that way.
Well, yeah, he did. He did, yeah.
That he was being used even in the construction of the thing that he was one of the principal agents in bringing forward, I imagine.
He was he and Greg were the major players in that, but later when he really started getting paranoid, he was thinking, he was seeing a conspiracy behind everything, and that he'd been manipulated into creating the Discordian Society, a spoof religion.
Yes,
because it was part of some greater design. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, like you said earlier, I mean, you got to entertain the idea that there's some factual basis behind all of that. I mean, when you look at the Kennedy assassination, and you look at Oswald, and you look at all the strangeness around him, and all the different books and theories that have been put forward, about him having, some kind of surgery done while he was in Minsk in Russia, which supposedly implanted him with some kind of device, and there's a very strong mind control angle behind it. I think Lincoln Lawrence went into that in Were We Controlled, and I guess it'd be very easy for Thornley being close to things like that, and realizing later that he had E. Howard Hunt talking to him about how to kill the president, in like a coffee shop or whatever it was, and I could imagine myself in that situation thinking, what possibly could have been waiting for me, or had been planned for me had Oswald not come through the way they planned it to. Yeah, it's just really bizarre.
Something just dawned on me. This is interesting realization. Thornley claimed that, it was Barbara Reed who claimed that she saw Thornley and Oswald together at a restaurant called the Bourbon House at the time, and afterwards Thornley claimed he didn't remember meeting Oswald there. He couldn't remember exactly who it was. But there's a lot of people have done some research in recent years, suggest there was a different Oswald that came back from Russia. There's a book called Lee and Harvey by a researcher named John Armstrong, and he shows the different photos of Oswald over the years, and it looks like there was indeed two different Oswalds. Pretty fascinating. And perhaps if there was a different Oswald that came back from Russia, that would explain why Thornley didn't recognize Oswald at the Bourbon House restaurant.
If in fact he actually did meet him there.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, according to Barbara Reed, yeah. And I'm familiar with the two Oswald theory. I mean, there were some people that pointed out discrepancies even a long time ago about